The Untold History, a podcast by the Hispanic Council, with the collaboration of the Spanish Ministry of Defense, to get to know great Spanish figures in the history of the United States. Today, Juan de Oñate. If we can speak of a New World aristocracy, few personify it better than Juan de Oñate Salazar and his descendants. Juan was Gonzalo Salazar's grandson on his mother's side, who was Royal Treasurer and son of Don Cristóbal de Oñate, one of the founders of the city of Zacatecas in Mexico. Juan was born there, where he also met his future wife, a granddaughter of Hernan Cortés and great-granddaughter of Moctezuma, the last Mexica Emperor. No one could deny the Castilian, Creole, and indigenous ancestry of the couple's children. Juan de Oñate made history with the conquest and settlement of New Mexico, but this was not the first incursion into these lands north of Mexico, in what is now U.S. territory. Before him, Vázquez de Coronado had already explored the area between 1540 and 1542. His venture ended in failure, at least by the standards of time. Half a century had to pass before the crown reconsidered its expansion to the north, always under two principles: the discovery of wealth and gaining souls for Christ. After Vázquez de Coronado, there were reports of mine hunters and adventurers of God, both encouraged by their respective goals, although not always with the pertinent approvals. It was not until March 29, 1583, when the royal decree authorizing the plan for the conquest and colonization of New Mexico was approved. It didn't happen in a day. 12 years went by from the time the decree was approved until the expedition was granted on September 21, 1595. It was granted to Juan de Oñate. However, his dreams of glory and wealth still had to wait. The conquest of New Mexico had many candidates, some of whom conspired against the favorite, Oñate. Even after he was confirmed for the mission, intrigues delayed the expedition until early 1598, 3 years after it was approved. Finally, Oñate left Santa Barbara in Chihuahua on January 26th of that year. Santa Barbara was the most northern town in New Spain. The capitulation signed by Oñate with the crown recognized him as governor and general captain of any territory he conquered. However, he was responsible for the recruitment of soldiers, settlers, missionaries, and guides, as well as their equipment and supplies. That is to say, the general expenses of the expedition. The fact that a considerable number of women, children, and livestock were part of the expedition was an indication of its vocation of permanence. The length of the caravan was longer than a league. These and other details are known thanks to one of the expedition members, Gaspar Pérez de Villagrá, a man of action and letters. Gaspar was not satisfied with taking part in the conquest of New Mexico, but was determined to record the event, and moreover, in verse, trying to emulate, without success, his admired Alonso de Eracia, author of La Araucana. The poem's lack of literary quality is compensated by its valuable contributions in geography and history. Thus, after reading Pérez de Villagrá, we know that after crossing the desert, the expedition reached the Rio Grande River, on whose north side Juan de Oñate solemnly took possession of the territory in the name of Philip II. He also ordered the celebration of a Thanksgiving Mass to be followed by a copious meal, the first Thanksgiving Day in North American history. Although Oñate was 2 decades ahead of the Mayflower Pilgrims, the first celebration was held by Pedro Menéndez de Avilés, founder of St. Augustine in Florida. Oñate's other achievements include the route he opened, the so-called Camino Real de Tierra Interior, which would become one of the major routes of cultural and commercial exchange in North America. After founding San Gabriel, the capital of the new territory, more than 1,200 kilometers from the nearest Spanish settlement, Oñate launched into a frenetic exploratory race with expeditions as far west as Arizona and as far east as Texas. Like so many explorers before them, they dreamed of finding fertile lands, silver deposits, and the fabulous Strait of Anian, which, according to popular belief at the time, joined the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans in the north. The Spaniards found no trace of the legendary strait, but they did see with their eyes and stepped with their feet on the no less legendary city of the clouds, known as Acoma, the best fortress in all Christendom, in the words of the governor and general captain of New Mexico. A handful of explorers perished there, deceived by the natives who inhabited its heights. When Oñate learned of this, he ordered a punitive expedition, contravening his obligation to discover and populate with all peace, friendship, and Christianity. But there was no other choice if he wanted to be respected by the natives who populated the region, around 30,000. Either the Spaniards took Acoma, or the conquest of New Mexico ended there. On January 12, 1599, Oñate sent one of his captains from San Gabriel to Acoma, leading 70 men to take the city of the clouds and avenge the dead. After 2 days of fierce fighting, the Spaniards managed the impossible: to penetrate the walls of the seemingly inexpugnable bastion, overcoming a numerical disadvantage of 1 against 10, and they reduced the city to dust and ashes. The news that a handful of white warriors had crushed the fiercest of the Pueblo natives against all odds spread like wildfire among the rest of the tribes, who flocked to San Gabriel to submit to Oñate. The episode, certainly amazing, went down in the annals of history as the War of the Rock. Once the territory was at peace, Oñate and his men undertook new explorations by horse, this time through the lands of Oklahoma and Kansas. Following the course of the Colorado River, he would then reach the coasts of Lower California on the Pacific. The long absences to which he was forced by his adventurous desires were totally incompatible with the good government of San Gabriel, causing discomfort to the settlers of the place. Oñate was as harsh with those who deserted as he was with the natives. It was only a matter of time before the king heard about the energetic behavior of Oñate in New Mexico, as well as his poor management of the settlement. On August 24, 1607, the crown forced him to resign. In Mexico City, where his presence was required, Oñate was convicted on a dozen charges, stripped of all titles, and forced to pay a large sum of money as a penalty, ultimately ruining him. Shortly after, he traveled to Spain to appeal to the Council of the Indies. In 1621, 14 years after his dismissal, he was reinstated. He would no longer return to America. He died in Guadalcanal, Seville, in 1626, at the age of 77, with the satisfaction of having been recognized for having expanded to the north the limits of the Spanish Empire in America.